The car has sat for long enough. It's time to take the Iroc-Z out of the garage, work on the charging system, the cooling system, as well as the exhaust system. Summer is finally here in the northern part of the United States, and I can't wait to get the car on the road again.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to today's video where I'm finally going to actually take on the project of working on the exhaust on the Camaro. I ended up getting just a single side of manifold gasket set, and I got a couple of exhaust donuts. There's a couple different sizes listed for the generation of Chevrolet truck that I believe the block and cylinder heads came from, so hopefully one of those two is going to work. But I think I'm just going to do the one side. For now, I don't have any long or short-term plan to put any sort of header on this car because I've been going back and forth about turboing it with the small block in it. After doing a whole bunch of pricing and stuff, I just really don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze on this one, if you will. I do have the turbo and stuff on hand, but I've been really hesitating on pulling the trigger on any one thing on this because I've got a few projects going on right now. In addition to the cars, there's something really big going on in the background, and there will be a future video on that. So it'll all make sense at a certain point, but to be super clear, I'm not made of money, and all this stuff does add up, and I just kind of do it for fun. So whatever I do, it's just got to make sense. But for now, I'm going to get the car up in the air, and I'm going to see if I can get those collector bolts out on this side. And realistically, since I got all the hardware loose and reinstalled with anti-seize on this side earlier this spring, this should go pretty easily. So knock on wood, I don't jinx myself on it, but I'm really hoping I can go take those collector bolts loose. Whether or not they break or whatever, I can always weld a stud on there. I've got the technology in the garage to do that, so I should be able to booger this thing back together, and hopefully it's going to be quiet, because right now the exhaust leak on this side is pretty horrendous, and honestly it's just annoying driving it. It's kind of embarrassing. It sounds terrible. It's like any 94 Ford F-150 on the road. They've all got a cracked manifold. You can hear them coming a mile away, so I hate to be mistaken for a Ford truck driving this. But anyways, enough about that. I'm going to put the front of the car up in the air and get to work. Alright, so check this out. This is the exhaust setup on the car, and this will give you a good idea kind of what I'm dealing with. But they have adapted the F-body Y pipe and everything with this. I've never seen a plate like this. If anybody knows exactly why you'd use this, whether it's just to adapt a manifold to the cylinder head or what, if you want to let me know, drop a comment down below. I'm not exactly sure what this is for. But anyways, I'll pull that off, and I'm going to bead blast that. I've got a bead blaster here now, so I'll pull that off, get everything all cleaned up in the blasting cabinet I got set up here, and hopefully, by the looks of it, I've got everything on hand the first time around to actually reassemble this. So this is an exhaust gasket. I'm sure many of you know what it is. On the heater valve is what I think it is. This valve was entirely missing this gasket. I don't know they don't just disappear, but it sits right in there like that. And obviously it'll sit, you know, inside of this side respectively too. So the gasket was completely missing. And on the bottom side, it appears just to be a ball and socket fitting. So I don't think that's where we were leaking. It was on top. There was just no gasket whatsoever. So you can imagine when this thing was running, it was kind of just bolted together like that. You do need a gasket in there. So I don't know why there's not one in there, but I'll make sure that we've got one now, and we should be off on a, that'll get us off on the right foot. But as far as I can tell, that's really all I've got to do. Maybe I can get some exhaust paste or something like this that you can put, I think, on exhaust pipes, and it should seal this up nice and tight. But like I said, I'm just going to clean up all this gasket material. These were really leaking bad, so this is a good little project to do on it. I'm going to bead blast all this stuff, and I'll report back when I'm done. Alright, so I'm all done cleaning up these flanges and exhaust hardware pieces. I did take a grinder, which you're not really supposed to do. I know you want to keep things flat, and it's hard to do with a small grinder, but I took off some of the high spots real quick, as well as the rest of the gasket material and everything after bead blasting this one. So that's all clean, and all my mating surfaces here are nice and clean too. Well, there's a lot of corrosion and pitting and stuff. You can't really fix that without building material back up and taking it away again by welding, but there's a lot of built up corrosion that was actually really high, and you can kind of see how it sat on top of it. Anyways, it's going to be a much better surface than we would have otherwise had. I should be able to start kind of throwing bolts in and slide the gaskets in from the top when I'm all done like so. And hopefully when I'm all done, I'm going to have a really, really quiet passenger side of the exhaust system. I'm going to go through real quick with a Scotch-Brite, clean up the cylinder heads. Those are actually pretty clean, which is good. And I'm going to start putting this thing back together. You know, I put this off for a long time, but in reality it's only going to take me an hour or two, even with bead blasting all that stuff. So, hope it goes back together good. We'll get this thing started pretty quick. There you go. Sounds like that took care of it. So I don't hear anything over here anymore, and pretty much all I hear now is exhaust. You know, I got comments before, I got doors and windows and stuff open, so I'm getting all the sound now. Cool. All done. Maybe there's still a little leak somewhere, but I mean, this took care of 99% of it, so any of the noises I can live with. Alright, so I'm pretty much wrapped up. Under here off camera I did go through, put some fresh grease in all the grease fittings under the car, so all of them are free and easy to put some grease into. Under the car, everything's pretty rough, as you might expect, but that is not what it's all about. I'm gonna go for a little drive. I gotta return a couple of parts, and what I'm gonna do when I get back is start cleaning up some more of the wiring. I should clean up this really crappy fan harness install. I mean, there's a whole number of things I can do. Additionally, I do need to get the coolant temperature sensor working. So that's kind of my tentative plan. I'll see if I can do it. I'm hoping it's a one-wire circuit, and I guess until I know a little bit more, I'll get the car down, we'll go for a little drive, and see how it's running. flush the car all up. I know people have asked before, what will happen if you get water in here? And what happened to me is absolutely nothing. I wasn't even really all that careful spraying it off or whatever. So as far as I can tell, engines are somewhat made to get wet to a degree. But I do still hear an exhaust leak in the car. It's sort of hard to pinpoint it, and I'm wondering if it's from maybe the glass pack. But the car is running good. When I pulled it out of the garage, I had the firing order wrong on cylinder 4 and 6, so that's why I was spitting and sputtering and running kind of rough. But I figured it out when I washed it. It was ready to take off, and it started running really good. Alright, so this car has always had a problem with the alternator squealing like crazy when I put a load on it. So when I first started, it does it. It's not doing it now that the car is running with the lights on, but it really sounds like this thing's rattling, and it still really pulls the motor down. Even though I swapped the battery with one of the GTA, which also has an electric fan setup, and it's never had that problem. It doesn't pull the car down at all. What I suspect is actually going on is that this alternator is failing, and it cannot keep up with the demand from the battery. 14.5 volts while it's idling, and under load it's like 12.7, 12.8, so it puts a pretty good bog on that thing. And I don't think it's keeping up. Additionally, it's making some noises that I really know that they shouldn't make. It should be quiet, but I can hear that thing rattling.
Days growing longer, it's the coldest holiday. Didn't write it in a letter, you never said it to my face. Didn't stay for a final goodbye. Temptation is falling, darkest alive. You couldn't save yourself, running blind.
Alright. So this thing is running absolutely perfect, and I don't know if you can hear it or not, or hear the difference, but the alternator is super, super quiet now. So I had 14.5 volts charging, so I'm going to see what happens when the fans kick on, but when I turn the HVAC blower motor and headlights on all at the same time, it did bog the battery down a little bit, but the alternator kept right up. Didn't bite it too much, so we'll see what happens here, but I got a good feeling about it, and I think it's going to be okay. Fan is running. And it hasn't bogged down the motor almost at all. So I'm going to say that this was a win. That's one of many more fixes I'm going to do in this video. But for now, that's got the charging system in much better shape. So I feel really good about this one. Okay, so last night I got some stuff fixed on the car. I don't know if I'll have shown you or not by this time of the video, but I did get the oil pressure sender gauge working. So you can see the oil pressure in the car now, which is good. I think I've got a bad coolant temperature gauge in the car after all that digging, but for now, so I gotta pick up a set of wheels and tires for the 4th gen, and it's about 2 hours away. This is the first long trip in the Firebird here. Hopefully, it's gonna go okay. Guys, we're in Hugo, Minnesota right now, and I am just a couple of minutes away from meeting the guy, and the car's doing pretty good. It started this new thing where it likes to die after it's hot, so I stopped at a rest stop, and the car just wanted to die unless I pedaled it and just drove. So that's not good, and I'm hearing some noises from the front and rear brakes. So I'm going to try and be as easy on it as I can, and hopefully I'll get out of here in one piece. Alright, so this went successfully. The tires are in pretty good shape overall. There's only a couple of passes on them. A little curb rash on the wheels, but overall, this is what I'm looking for. They're OEM Speedline wheels. They're 17 by 9.5, which is actually a front runner. Let's see here. It's upside down, but 17 by 9.5 and a 54 millimeter offset. So these are factory OEM Speedline wheels. These would have came on a C5 Z06 Corvette, and these wheels and tires are really light. I mean, I would guess they're 5-10 pounds lighter each than the weld setup, and it's a 28 by 10 inch tall slick. So for scale here, kind of see how tall it is. Check out how tall it is compared to this factory 16-inch wheel. Way bigger. So it should fit inside of the wheel wells, and it's very important that you have the front wheels, not the rears, because I think the rears are 18 by 10s and they just don't fit. So they don't fit without doing the big hammer mod. So at any rate, the drive's going okay. The seller was awesome. We chatted about cars for quite a while, and maybe I'll see him one day at BIR. So I'm gonna get these loaded back up into the car, and we'll see you guys at home. Alright, so the car made it back in one piece. It does have some strange brake things going on, but I test fit one of the wheels on the rear driver's side, and check out how well it fits. I'll go to the other side here. Check that out. Fits just about perfect. Now, I could move the rear end forward maybe a ½ an inch or a ¼ inch, and it would take care of this little close area we got. There's actually a gap all the way through there. Might be hard to tell, but if I push on the bumper cover at all, you can see how close it is in there. So it's pretty close. I'd imagine this tire will grow a little bit when you're going 100+ miles an hour, so I don't want to screw up my bumper cover. But what I can do, and it'll alter the wheelbase a little bit, but I can move it forward, you know. I mean, there's 3 fingers in there. It's a pretty good sized gap. And inside, it doesn't hit anywhere. It actually fits really, really good. Probably see all the way around there, I hope. But it doesn't hit anywhere. It's really close on the bumper cover here, so it's too bad. It's almost a perfect fit, but luckily I've got some adjustable lower control arms from UMI, and what I can do is make that up by moving the rear end in the car forward a little bit. So, not the end of the world, and as far as I can tell, these things are going to work just perfect. You can already see it because there's lower tire pressure in them, but the sidewall on it will give a little bit, so what you're going to get out of it is a little bit less shock to the tire with a stick car, or you know, any car for that matter. But it's going to be a little bit better on it for leaving and getting a 60-foot in. That's the whole reason to getting them. I also venture to guess that this wheel and tire setup is considerably lighter than these wheels and tires. These Toyo R888s and the wheels that they're mounted on are actually pretty heavy, so could be a big win overall. I'm not going to put it on the other side, but when the time comes to go racing again, I'll get it all set up for this thing, and we should be ready to rock. Alright, so now that we're all done checking out the wheels and tires, I was really scratching my head on what's going on with this coolant temp sensor issue. Now, this might seem obvious now, but I didn't realize that the terminology on the coolant temperature sender, switch, and I forget the other term. There's a few things these are referred to as, and what I needed was a sender, and what I was actually provided appears to have been a coolant temperature switch. Now, the switch is going to be something that's going to turn on your fans at a certain temperature, for example, whereas a sender is going to have a variable negative resistor in it. So as the temperature goes up, the resistance goes down in the circuit, which means more current will flow through your gauge, causing it to climb. So, I did a little jerry-rig job here, and if you'll behold the beauty of what I've got going on, I set it up so the dark green coolant temperature wire for the gauge is hooked up to this sender that I just picked up from O'Reilly's, and I ran that straight over to the negative battery terminal. With the key on, you're going to get 12 volts of positive power on this wire, and what it's doing is putting power into this sender, and as the temperature goes up, the resistance internally will change, causing your gauge to climb, because it's actually on the far end of the gauge right now, if that makes sense. So as the resistance goes down, your temperature gauge goes up, and vice versa. Alright, so you'll see the gauge sweep, and apparently this means that the gauge is functional. So I'll go on, it'll peg and drop. Well, anyways, it dropped. At any rate, the gauge works. So if I go put heat on that with a blowtorch, you will see that the temperature will go up. Alright, so I'm going to go put a little bit of heat on it, and you're going to see it climb up really, really quick, and then it'll drop once I take heat off. So the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to test the sensor before I actually swap it. because you got to dump the coolant out and all that. But I've got heat on it now. Right on the tip of it, I've got this little propane torch. It's probably pegged almost. It's hot. So I got heat off now, and you'll see the gauge start dropping back down. So that tells me that this sensor is probably going to work for me. It's really too bad because this sender and that switch look identical, but internally they must be different and they must have a different purpose. So enough about that. I'm going to get this jerry rig undone to dump all the coolant out and take two on this. Here's exactly what I'm talking about. This is still maybe warm to the touch. You'll see the resistance is going to be going up as it's cooling off. You can see it in real time. So right now the gauge would be dropping in the car. As you can see, the resistance value is going up. Now if I'm going to heat it up, which I could do real quick, you'll see the resistance is way lower, but I think you get the idea. So this is how it's supposed to work, and it's supposed to work real smooth. If I grab the other gauge that I've got here, here's the factory gauge that was in here. And the readings are just all over the place. Doesn't seem to be a lot of sense to it. If I get on some real clean metal here, it's just all over. Can't get a good reading, so that one must have been bad. This one's still climbing, nice and steady. So, I'll go dump the coolant out of the car again. We'll get that new sensor installed quick. Alright, so it's been running for a few minutes outside and it's creeped up to right under 100 degrees. I've got the coolant level pretty well topped off, so we'll see if it actually goes up to operating temp. I'm really hoping this is going to be the fix. I mean, I showed that the gauge does work. It'll sweep all the way hot when you peg it with like a torch. So in my head the gauge works. Hopefully that coolant temperature sender works as well. I also noted that the oil pressure gauge works too. Check that out, it started working. So a couple of wins. Super good oil pressure here. So I'll let this warm up for quite a while and I'll report back if this thing climbs all the way up or not. So far so good. Check that out, we're getting some temp now. This is awesome. I'm gonna finish running a couple of errands and hopefully by the time I get stopped, we'll be up to temp and it should reflect that. I'd expect anywhere in the 200 range. Looks like it's almost there, so I'll report back. What do you think? Does it sound any different? Sorry if there's a little bit of road noise, but I've got the window open today. It's probably 75, 80 degrees and kind of humid out, and there's no air in this car. So I'm kind of picking my battles with sound. One of the next big things I should really do on this car is take a look at swapping that rear end that I bought, because the pinion bearing, as I believe it were to be on this car, is making a ton of noise now. You know, the rear end in this car gets noisier every single time I drive it, so I'll probably pick up quite a bit of that while I'm on the road here, but it drives really good, believe it or not. Now that I got the exhaust fixed, this alternator problem kind of sorted out. When I gotta coast, that rear end will get noisy. Sounds right, huh? So I think the pinion bearing is going out of this thing. It got a lot noisier after putting the UMI lower control arm with the spherical rod ends on each side, which is to be expected. So I don't know how bad it really is.
just this noisy in the 4th gen with the same lower control arm setup. So, in all honesty, it might not be that bad, but it's noisy. Well, there you have it, guys. It's running pretty good. Let's go hop in the car and do a quick cruise in it, and hopefully it's going to sound better than ever, and more importantly, run better than ever. I have noticed that for the temp to come up on the car, as you can see, it's right under 100 right now. It takes quite a bit of heat for that gauge to actually move up. I don't know if there's no thermostat or what the deal is in the car. There's something going on though where I unplugged the radiator fan relay and the temperature climbed up as you'd expect. It got up to the 190, 200 range, wherever that second, or whatever that second notch is there between 100 and 220. It kept climbing up there when I had the radiator fan unplugged, but I'm wondering if I got a little bit of air in the system yet, or if it just doesn't have a thermostat, or what the deal is, because it takes a really long time for it to come up to temp. The first time I went to drive it, it went up real quick, but every time since then, it's been pretty slow. So I don't really know what's going on with that. I was screwing with it off camera for quite a while, and it does work. So for whatever reason, it just doesn't like to show any temp until it gets nice and hot. Well, there you have it, guys. We fixed up the charging system. We got the cooling system improved, so now I actually know what the temperature is. The oil pressure gauge is now working, and we know that the motor is pretty healthy overall. And the exhaust system, most importantly, does not sound like it's a Ford F-150 going down the road. But that's about all I got for today's video. If you're new to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe button because I've got a real treat for you guys in the next video. Hope you guys liked it, and we'll see you guys in the next one. I try to replay the good times, but